goes. Okay, now we're good. Now we're up.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, exactly.
Good morning. This is Chris and Catherine from Artistic Artifacts this morning, and we're going to talk about the rice bags. But as usual, we've got a few announcements to make before we get started.
Right.
Because once we get started,
you're going to be stopping us.
That's no stopping us, as you can see from our own bags, and inspiration for you today. Today is the 29th of June. It's a fifth Saturday. And so for our local customers, we've got our end of bolt sale. There was a lot of bolts headed out of here Thursday and Friday, but there's still lots of fabric to take advantage of. And especially because we've been making kits for the shop hop. So lots of bolts are down. So to buy some of your favorite fabrics, there's some good sized bolts to buy.
So if you finish the bolt,
40% off.
Okay.
Yeah, whether it's 1 yard or the whole bolt.
Okay, great.
Good. Great opportunity for buying backing and charity quilts and whatever else. I think I saw a couple people bought wide backs at 40% off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's
so great opportunity. Our curated bundles and our pre-cut 1 yard and half yards are also on sale 25% off in the store. And the curated bundles are 25% off online. That sale ends at midnight tonight. The Mid-Atlantic Shop Hop starts on, it goes through July and August. It will start here in the store on July 2nd because we're closed on Mondays. And then we are closed on July 4th. So next week, the Shop Hop will be Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we'll be back in our regular schedule on Friday and Saturday. We have the road show coming up on August 5th for the new 990. It's from 1 to 4. Register $15. It's a demonstration of the new machine with an educator from Bernina. So it's a 3-hour class with her demonstration, and you'll get 20% off shopping, except for the classes and the machines that day. It's a Monday afternoon, so do register so we know how many people to expect. And I think that's a major announcement for right now. So today, Catherine and I are going to talk about our love for the modern Japanese rice pouch by kzstevens. I actually found her, I think I found it on Instagram several years ago, and I've been making the bags for a while since then. Perfect palette to do whatever you want with fabric, and because it's a small enough size, you can hand stitch, you can machine stitch, you can machine embellish, you can do whatever. So we're going to give you some inspiration today on what you can do with these bags, and then Catherine will go over to the machine and give you some instructions on some tips that she has on how to sew the bottom in. It's a square bottom, and a few other things. So why don't you go ahead and get started on some of yours?
Okay, well, I have this whole treasure chest here, this basket that I keep just stacks of fabric in that, go together and might make another rice bag. And so I have like, I don't know, 8 or 10 pending here in line. But
now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, the reason why they're so fun is because I can take my leftovers and make them into something useful. For instance, this bag was supposed to be an art quilt that I did improv piecing together, and it just wasn't working. And so I cut it to the right size. I did some hand embellishing, and now this is my hand stitching supply bag with my wonder clips, my little scissors, thimbles, etc. So I can easily take this with me and just pick it up and grab it, and it's ready. This was another one that was improv piecing colors that didn't necessarily go together, but by adding the stitching, I could do that. This I keep very small knitting projects in. I like to knit little hats, and that works well there. So if you noticed on this one and some of the others, I like to use twill tape and ribbons for the tabs, the upper tabs, instead of what the pattern recommends. Now what the pattern recommends works fine, but I have this little bowl of twill tape that I keep next to me, and I pick things out. So I use things that tie up fat quarter
That'd
bundles.
be easier than making these.
Right, yeah. And I just like the look of it. And usually I will add just a little tab down here to make it look a little bit more store-bought, I guess. But I like that little added embellishment. And you could stamp on this. You could print your initials on it or something to make it really custom. So some other things I've done is this one, all the action is in the lining. It's a piece, extra pieces that I had left over from another project, but the outside is linen. And I just like to really do this seed stitch, and I added some fabric panels. And this is a set of tilde buttons that I thought added color and interest to this.
So what do you use as a stabilizer?
I like Pellon SF 101, and the reason why I like that is because it's a woven stabilizer. Because if I'm going to be doing hand stitching, my needle goes through a woven interfacing, whereas if it was a non-woven, kind of a fused thing, it's much harder to push your needle through kind of interfacing.
Do you put your interfacing on after you stitched or when you've pieced your pieces together?
I do it right away. I'm going to be demonstrating on this one, and you can see that the interfacing is already on it, and then my stitching goes right through the interfacing.
Okay.
I think that just adds to the stability.
Yeah, because that's kind of what I'm doing here.
Mm-hmm.
Is I've got a piece that I started working on this week, and I didn't stitch my pieces together. They're actually fused onto the Pellon.
Okay.
And then I'm hand stitching them. But this was another way of, this was scraps from a quilt that didn't work, but I've got some of my indigo dyeing. I've got a piece of cyanotype. And then this is just sits where either with my coffee in the morning or my glass of wine in the evening.
Right.
I've got it sitting next to me, and I'll just stitch until I decide that I've done enough stitching.
Right. Yes. And I like the cyanotype. We have these wood blocks in the store.
Oh, that's right.
As well. And they're very fun. I used the dogwood wood block that we have, and I put it on one plain panel, and then I added French knots in the center. And then that was the star of this side. Then the other sides have more piecing and hand stitching, and these are some antique buttons from the store. This is another one that was stitched and stamped, and I particularly like the metallic gold. It is so pretty. I use these smaller paints that we have in the store. They work great. I don't have any trouble with them at all. They're the right consistency. They're easy to clean up, and I really like the metallic look. So that's something fun to do. So this is just hand applique. I just felt like doing circles. I wanted to practice those before another project. And I wanted to show you this one. The pattern gives you several sizes. So you can see this is a larger size right here as compared to this size right here.
So this is the 8-inch.
You start with a piece 8 inches tall, 25 inches wide.
Mm-hmm.
This one is larger.
I think it's.
I'm
trying to think it's 9.
I think.
Yeah.
Yes. And it really increases your bag size. So if you wanted to do knitting,
I was going to say it would fit probably a sweater, knitting.
That was
yeah.
underway. Yeah. I've heard of people using these for their personal care items in their suitcases when they're traveling. You just can use them for all kinds of different things. Gift bags for a friend.
Well, and I did one similar to this. So this one is, I didn't put tabs on.
Okay.
So But I made one like this last year. So this is with K square dance and the black and white, and I've done hand stitching on it. But I didn't put the tabs or the tile.
Right.
But I made one last year, and my niece used it, and she put a potted plant, you know, with the foil around it.
Yes.
It was Thanksgiving fabric, or fall fabric, and she just put a plant inside it. So you could make it with Christmas and put a potted poinsettia or something inside of it.
Turn it into a centerpiece.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do have a question.
Okay.
Catherine, what's the name of the stabilizer, or sorry, the interfacing that you were talking about?
Pelon SF101. And we have that here.
And it's an iron-on. It's a lightweight, fusible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's lightweight, and as she said, when you're stitching, it's easy to stitch through because it's a loose weave.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we do have those online, correct?
The paints? Yes, the wood blocks. I believe they are online.
Well, we have all kinds of wood blocks online. Yeah. I don't know if that particular one is still in stock because we went through them pretty quickly, but we have lots of wood blocks.
And I checked yesterday. This, as a single dogwood, is not on the floor, but there's a dogwood as part of a set.
I think that's part of the K facet design set. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and I just loved it. So, all right. So what else do you have here?
Well, this one we wanted to show off. This one was won by actually one of our creative minds, Linda Morgan, who does just gorgeous.
It's exquisite.
She does gorgeous hand stitching, but lots of fun things that she puts together. So she's done some hand stitching, hand applique. She's got these little tiny fluffy things on here. She's got one of the polymer clay buttons that we sell. My favorite, French knots.
Yes.
So she's made it into she's got, it's that foil. It's a glue, it's like a pen with foil on it. Look at that.
That's sparkly. It's so
But I love this.
Yes, I do too. So creative.
So to me, it's a palette of, it's small enough that you could just like do whatever you want.
Right, and you get 4 different sides to try something. So it's really fun.
Well, you talked about personal care items, and so I'm trying, this is another one, because, when I'm upstairs in my sewing room with the fabric around me, I'm like, oh, I could do this, I could do that.
Right.
So this one is fabric by Lisa Works. I just love it. It's some fun cats and crabs and beach. But I've used Odie coat on it.
Oh, that's fabulous. What a great idea.
So I've coated it with Odie coat. And you can, but it'll wipe off. So I think this bag would be a fun one to make. And, if you're going down to the beach or the pool, you can put your sunscreen and your phone and your AirPods or whatever
so
on it.
So with the lining coated too, it makes the bag water resistant both on the outside and the inside. Yeah.
So I've got to do the bottom squares yet, but this was when I finished the other ones this week getting ready for today. I was like, oh, I could do this. I could do that.
Right. That's the thing. You just keep getting more and more ideas.
So she's got the pattern. It's very simple pattern. There's easy to follow. Right. And this is the square. And Catherine will show you that after we show a few more of the bags for inspiration.
Right. I have some tips on assembly. So go ahead.
So one of the things that Catherine's talked about is, these for us, because we both like to hand stitch when we're not at the machine, is lots of them are hand stitched, embellished with hand stitching, but you can embellish it with quilting, machine quilting. I know there's one around the shop someplace where I did with K scraps.
Right.
And I used all decorative stitches on my machine.
Right.
This one I have just stitched in the stripes of this Tula tiny stripes and used the Charlie Harper fabric. And of course I did a couple.
I saw that. I let Chris put feet on the birds. It's so cute.
So on this, and this was the salvage of the fabric.
Oh, what a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Let's
have
see the feet.
batting in this? Oh, so
Mhm.
here's the feet. Can you see those little feet?
So I stitched the feet. They're on the fabric, but I just gave them a little highlight because you just had to put
'Cause
some
they're
other
fun.
things. Yes. Yeah. Instead of using the Pellon, I used a really thin batting.
Okay. All
And
right.
sometimes I've made them where I think that one feels like it has batting in it.
Okay.
Occasionally I use felt. It just depends on what I have available in the
right.
sewing studio.
If you want a little bit of stability, I've found that felt is so much easier to hand stitch through than batting.
Oh, yes, because then you don't get the bearding.
Yes, plus I like to use pearl cotton, and so I need a needle that has a bigger eye, and they're not always as sharp, and so getting through that batting can be a real problem. But the felt works great.
And if I use felt, what I do make sure is when I go to do the seams, and when I go to, if I've put felt and done the hand stitching, but when I go to do this seam and this one, I do cut the felt away so that there's not all that bulk in there.
Right.
Because it can get pretty bulky.
Right.
So this is a new one that I just finished with our Halloween fabric.
That's so cute.
Hand stitched it. This is kitty litter. And then this is, I think this is some Elisa Works. And of course, you know, there's little French knots and whiskers.
Decorating the kitties.
Yes.
Yes.
And this is the tabs that the pattern shows you to make. And what you do is you cut a rectangle, you fold it over so that you don't have it, fold it twice, stitch it down. And so that's the tab where Catherine's using twill tape. I'm making the tabs with a complementary fabric.
Right. And you could use ribbon. You could do anything that you wanted.
And
use
then
things you have at home.
This is another, this is a linen fabric that we have. I think it's called In Bloom by Figo Fabrics. And I cut some different squares out of this fabric and vice versa. Embellished them with some hand stitching. I've got some, I'm using 12 weight thread on this one. And then I like this. We've got some ribbon that's called twill ribbon that's called Handmade with Love. So I put my little Handmade with Love inside.
That's wonderful.
And you're showing?
We have a tall version.
Oh,
okay.
Our customer Kathleen Rankin.
Yes, this is the round bottom. This is lovely. Look at this.
Oh, wow. Let's see that panel.
Oh, that's a cool Japanese, you know, Asian-inspired fabric. I mean, I've used one where I've used one of our batik panels on the side of it.
Right, right.
Reversible.
Yes, the inside is beautiful too. This is beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Linen.
And that's this one. That's the hand-stitched round bottom bag.
Still by kzstevens. And she does a good job making the instructions clear.
Yep. And this one, it says hand stitch. You can machine or hand stitch.
Right, right.
And then there is another bag that she has, which is the wide strap cross body bag. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's see, what else do I have here? Here's another one where, again, it was a palette. I used some cyanotype on Osnaburg that I did from class. And then this is, you might have seen this one before when I was doing sashiko. I think there's a YouTube video on marking their fabric. This is some indigo dyed fabric where I did some sashiko stitching and then put my, this is a hand-dyed Indian cotton. And this one, I actually, it ended up that the fabric, I put it over the edge.
All right. Nice.
So it gives it a little bit of edging at the
border.
top. Yeah.
Yes.
And this is actually indigo dyed yarn.
For your tie.
For my tie.
Great idea.
Yeah. And that's got all my sashiko threads. This one's got knitting. So depends on the size of the project.
Chris and I are just busy with all kinds of things.
Again, yep. These are with the Japanese scraps that Judy has, little scraps on a piece of fabric. And this one I'm using cording.
Right.
This one I'm using a flat cording. And this one is some of that silky ribbon that we have. So, and before she goes to the machine, I want to say that we will have some kits. We're working on kits. And what we've done is we have picked 3 half yards of fabric. So you can actually get 2 bags out of the 3 half yards of fabric and then have some more. But then you can play whether you're just using 2 fabrics, 1 inside, but it gives you some options to mix and match. And the kit will include the pattern and the fabric, and we put some fun ones together. This is one that Katherine picked. This is Botanica. I love this fabric. So those go nice together. Here's the bird that I use. So those will be available probably by our Wednesday newsletter.
Okay. I can see hand stitching on these birds. There's beautiful birds here that you could feature.
Well, in this one, there's lots of
leaves, and this one has the flowers. So a lot of possibilities there.
So shall we go over to the...
Well, let me talk first just a little bit about this one that I have that we're going to demonstrate. This is what your panel first looks like. This is the outside. And as I said, I had the interfacing on it to do my hand stitching. And when I was first beginning machine quilting, I made a lot of little mug rugs out of extra blocks. And I have way too many mug rugs at home. And so this one was just sitting around. I thought, I'm going to put this on a bag as a pocket. So this is an outside pocket.
You could put your scissors in there.
I could. That's a great idea. And the shop had these little yo-yos that were pre-made.
They're little tie, I think they're tie silk yo-yos, yeah.
And
that's awesome.
It is. And I thought somebody took a long time making these little yo-yos by hand, and I'm pleased to have them on a bag. And then these strips right here are pieces of our sari silk. I just love having these in a big bunch at home, and they're just so fun to use on quilts and bags. So that's how I've decided to embellish that. And you can see here I've put the tabs on. I do that pretty early because by knowing where the tabs are in the center of the
You're so much more precise than
I am. So I know that this I centered the pocket. That'll be one side. This will be one side. This will be one side. And this will be the fourth side. So by doing that, I can make sure that I have enough interest on all 4 sides.
Yep.
So before we go to the machine, I wanted to tell you that Jean Wells has a good idea for how to make your fabric self ties. This is going to be the lining, and I decided to make the ties out of the lining. So this is one that is already put together, and what it is you cut a strip that's 1 3/4 inches wide by 34 inches long. You press it in half one time, and then you press it again, bringing the edges in. Then you fold it, and you stitch it. So that's how I make the self ties. So it's your choice what you want to do.
Yeah, I've done a few of those. Yeah.
Yes. So that's great. And then I wanted to tell you on my lining fabric. This is my lining fabric, and the instructions say to cut it the same size as this, which is 8 by 25. Well, I have found that when I do a lot of hand stitching, this outside of the bag tends to draw up a little bit. And so when I put it together, sometimes my lining is kind of bulky. And so
I've ended up a couple times where I've got a little, I'm doing a little fold on the lining.
Right. And so I cut my lining a 1/4 inch shorter so that it fits this way, and a 1/4 inch less in the length.
Good idea.
And what that does is it allows for the amount of volume that you've taken up by all the hand stitching that
Great
you're
idea.
doing.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to do hand stitching, if you just love the fabrics that are in the kits and you just put them together, you may not need to do that adjustment. But if you do the hand stitching, I find that it helps
It works.
to cut down the lining piece a little bit. So now let's go over to the machine, and I'm going to give you some tips on getting that square bottom in there. So follow me. So here's the bottom. I'm going to put the same kind of fabric on the bottom as I'm using for the sides. So my first tip is that you, as the instructions say, you add, you do the side seam for the outside body, and the pattern has you using 1/2 inch seam allowances. So I'm going to line up with this 4/8 right here line. Now the pattern says stitch down the entire length. What I'm going to do is stitch down the length starting at the top, but when I get to the bottom, I'm going to leave a little bit of it open. So let me just do that right now.
I'm getting good sewing practice tips from Catherine,
So
who's the instructor, and I'm the just get it done person.
Two different styles. We both have fun.
Yes.
So I'm going to go to about 3/8 of an inch there. I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm going to cut this. So I would press this open to make it go flat, but I don't have an iron set up right now. What I want to talk about now, we set that aside. This is the bottom. So what I do here on the bottom, and these are just clips for when I attach it, I choose one corner to be my starting point, and I take my ruler. These are 1/2 inch seams, so I make a little 1/2 inch line both directions, so I have a little corner there. I'm going to be sewing down this way, and so I make a little line at 1/2 inch here because I know that's where I'm going to want to stop. I'm going to pivot there, and then I'm going to come down this way, so I make a 1/2 inch line, little mark right there. Then I'm going to pivot right at that point, come down this way, and I have a 1/2 inch mark there. My needle's going to be in there. I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to come down my 4th side here and end at this 1/2 inch line right here. So when I put this right sides together, I'm not going to be able to see these lines. And so I take a pin and put it right on the line, and I'm not going to sew over this. This is just a marker so that I can see where these lines are when I'm sewing. So let me get these pins in here. These giant pins you certainly don't want to stitch over. And I'm not going to put one here yet because I don't want it to interfere with this. Now, this is the bottom of my bag seam. I want this to go right here. This is the corner. This is the 1/2 inch in, 1/2 inch over. So this is the corner that I want this seam to be in, right here. So I am going to lay this flat, right like this, get this position. I'm going to open up my seam and make sure that that seam is right there at that, right there at that mark. And you can see that. See, my seam is open and it's right on the mark. So I'm going to hold that, and I'm going to, whoops, I lost it. I'm going to clip it just to help hold it in place. So I'm going to use a Wonder Clip and put that in there. Okay, so I want to not catch the other side of the bag, but start no farther beyond here. This edge is at the 1/2 inch line right here. I'm going to move that over. And then I'm going to slowly put my needle down. Looks like I need to move it forward a little bit. There we go. And I know that's where I want to start stitching. So I'm going to start. And I don't have the automatic secure put on, so I'm going to take a few back stitches. One more. And then here we go. We're going to take a 1/2 inch or a 1/2 inch seam all the way down this side. I'm going to want to keep my needle down as I manipulate the fabric. And this pin now tells me where that 1/2 inch is. So I'm going to very slowly approach this pin. One more, I think. And I'm going to put my needle down. I'm going to lift up my presser foot. I'm going to take out this pin. And so that I can cut this corner, I'm going to carefully clip this at a diagonal. But I'm not going to clip all the way to the needle. I'm just going to clip it to ease it. And I'm going to leave 3, maybe 4 threads. So if I clip this like this, whoops, these scissors are, the SF-101 is stronger than my scissors. There we go. Now that's going to make turning that corner a whole lot easier. So now I can turn this. I reposition my fabric flat again, and I'm going to go flat along this side. So you can see this is right at a 1/2 inch. I can put my feed dog down and start sewing my second side. And that made it so much easier.
Yeah, it definitely makes it easier
to take that corner. Looks like I'm drifting a bit on my seam allowance because of those yo-yos are in the way.
I think it's right where your pocket's sewn.
Oh, right, my pocket is. So I'll go back and make sure that those seam allowances are the right way. But I'm going to pull this out of the way, and I'll do one more corner for us. I'm going to slowly inch up to the pin, not going over it. I can use my needle up, needle down to take 1 stitch at a time. I think I want one more. There we go. Take out the pin.
I learned something new myself today.
Lift up the presser foot. And now cut this. And I'm going to need to be careful not to cut my attachment to the pocket here. So I will carefully clip that. So I think I'll do this. These scissors, I want to be more careful. So I'm going to back stitch here, take this off the machine and carefully do that and reassemble it. So do we have any questions about this method?
No. Everyone was very enjoying it.
Well, good.
Actually, I do mine completely different, so I've learned something today because I do struggle with the corners.
Right, right.
And I do it from, I mark the back of my square.
The back of the bottom or the front?
The back of the bottom.
Okay.
And then I tuck the bottom in and sew on the inside. So I'm actually sewing on this way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Right.
I've taken that snip at the corner because otherwise you've got a bulk of fabric when you get to that corner to turn that corner.
Right, right.
How did you say you did it, Chris?
So
we can take this off. Do you want? Go ahead and take it off if you'd like.
Well, maybe scissors.
There you go.
So I actually put my piece in this way and I'm sewing from inside.
So you have the outside of the bag on the bottom and the bag bottom on
Yes.
the top
Yes.
as you sew.
And so I'm marking.
That's a great
I'm
idea.
marking the lining.
Right.
I think either way
Right.
works perfectly well, but this is what's going to make the difference is trimming that, because without that trim, without that little slit in there, when you're at that corner, you've got a lot of bulk.
You really struggle.
And it's like trying to make sure that it's all under. I've used a skewer to,
Yes,
keep it out of the way and
yes,
stuff. Yeah.
yes.
So this is, I like your way.
Okay, so,
Yep. I like that way a lot.
All right, let's turn this and see how the corner did. This is the one that we clipped.
I think we have customers at the door. So,
Okay. So Kyle, I don't know if you can get this, but there's a very nice sharp
yeah,
seam there in a corner because of that clip. That clip
that makes a
allowed
lot of
that
difference. Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
square
Oh,
corner.
good.
Okay, so those
Okay.
were my tips: the squaring the corner, the self ties, and then in order to enable the squaring of the corner, not stitching your side seam all the way, so that this is open a little bit to turn.
Good. Thank
to.
you.
So yeah, anything else?
All right.
Well, happy stitching.
Okay. I think they're knocking down the door to buy some fabric. So
Okay.
thanks for joining
We'll
us
see
this
you
morning.
later.